my gosh, hello. I just finished the episode and I am like shaking. I'm nauseous. I'm feeling so many kinds of things. We finally ended on somewhat of like a happy, lighter note at the very, very end. But what an episode. Of course, another great music moment. We open up with Where's My Mind by the Pixies. Such a good song. And also good lyrics for the show. Because when I'm watching this, I do feel like, where is my mind? We see Diana crying. When I first saw this, I was like, did Steven break up with her? Like, this has to be Steven. If a girl is crying, like, it's Steven related, right? But no. We learn later on why she's so upset. We'll talk about this in a bit. But the funny thing here is that she's in a Marie Antoinette outfit. I follow Megan Oppenheimer, so I got a little bit of a preview. I knew that it was going to be like a Halloween episode. If I didn't, did anyone watch this not knowing it's going to be about Halloween or take place on Halloween? And we're like, what the hell is she wearing? Because that would have been my reaction. They don't mention at all. They don't like say, oh, it's Halloween tonight. Which makes sense because you wouldn't say that out loud necessarily. But we see them in their costumes. It's sad. Like, we don't see a ton of Diana vulnerable moments, honestly. She's usually very put together, and she always has a comeback or something to say. But she gets up, and we see that she's in the library, and other people are in their costumes, which, you know, this show is so realistic as to the college environment. But this is the one thing I think they got wrong. Who is wearing their costume to the library? I've never seen that in my 4 years of college. Well, one COVID year. I've never seen that happen where people wear their costumes. I mean, maybe like in a class, but not in the library. And also, if these are the costumes they're going to be wearing at night, like, that was kind of weird to me. I don't know if I'm missing something. Let me know what you think or thought about that. Diana goes towards the printer, and who's there? It's Lady Gaga. I mean, Pippa dressed as Lady Gaga. First of all, another little plot hole. This show does not have any plot holes. Poker Face came out September 23rd, 2008. So either Pippa is super on top of trends, like she is a psychic and she knew this was going to be a sick costume, or I don't know what. That seems like a little close to me. But love the look on her. She's slaying it. And we have a Diana Pippa moment again. Diana seems to be softening up a lot to Pippa. I think after the night she helped her, and then also after seeing her get berated in front of Wrigley and all of the football team, it seems like she's developed a lot of sympathy for her. Pippa thanks Diana for telling the boys off, telling Wrigley that they shouldn't be harassing her like that. And you can tell Pippa is softening up to Diana as well, as opposed to that comment she made earlier on about how she's, kind of vicious to other girls. She sees that she's been kind and almost protective of her. Diana fixes the printer for Pippa, and they joke. They make this little joke about boys being immature, and it's just a nice moment. So I can finally see now how this relationship is going to develop, and I get it. Now we're in Marianne's class. Bree gets a text and she looks suspicious, and it's like, I wonder who that's from. And when she gets up to leave, she bumps into that girl Katie who read her short story the last class, which right away I was thinking, like, why are we focusing so much on this character? They really point her out amongst the other students in this class. Marianne pulls Lucy aside because we learn that Lucy's been trying to apply for this class, the art of the short story, for next term. But you know how she dropped out of a class where Stephen became her TA? Well, it turns out it wasn't just like you don't get just a dropout mark on your transcript. It counts as a 0 in your GPA. So her GPA now disqualifies her for even applying for this class. It wrecks her GPA. Lucy tells Marianne about how her ex became the TA and that's why she dropped out. And Marianne's so nice. She's like, should we tell someone about this? Like, I don't want you to feel unsafe. And I wish there was a way that Lucy could be like, yes. And I kind of wish when he became the TA that she said something to the professor and was just like, I can't have my stuff graded by, like, I just can't. There's a personal situation and I cannot have him grade my stuff. Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. And also for such a big class, usually those classes have multiple TAs and you can switch if there's a problem. So this was so tough to learn for Lucy. Marianne asks Lucy if she has any fun Halloween plans, and Lucy says that her friend from home is coming, so oh my gosh, that means Lydia is back. Lydia is coming in. This is going to be where we start to see the seeds of her and Steven's relationship developing. Like, we're going to learn what the heck happens to make them end up being engaged in 2015. And then Lucy's like, oh, what about you? And Marianne says, no, my husband's going to be out of town. And immediately I think about how Bree said to Oliver, I wish that we could have a sleepover or night together. It's going to be this weekend. And he's telling his wife that he's just going to be out of town. Ooh, and you can tell this also disturbs Lucy because she now knows about Bree and Oliver, and it's like Marianne is so kind to her, and she just keeps having all these secrets that she has to hold. But she's waiting on a bench, and then Lydia comes in, and they greet each other, and they hug. Lucy explains what happened with her GPA, and Lydia's angry about Steven, and she's excited to see him so that she can not punch him, but verbally punch him, it seems. Lucy brings Lydia back to her dorm, and there's Bree, and she's packing. And Lucy says, oh, what are you packing for? And Bree's like, I'm visiting my foster sister for the weekend. Yeah, we know right away she's gonna see Oliver. This is not about her foster sister. So when Lydia steps out, Lucy asks, really, your foster sister? And Bree confesses and says she's going to a hotel in Rhinebeck with Oliver. Any other friend or even Lucy here could be like, this might not be a good idea, but it's so much more complicated than that because of what Lucy did to Bree that she still doesn't know about. So she I think she wants to redeem herself, and she wants to be supporting of whatever Bree wants to do so that she can show up as a better friend. Because also it's like, who does she have to tell to not do something when she did something horrible? And then we cut to Steven. And guess who he has visiting this weekend? His little sister, Sadie. This is going to be so interesting because when we first met Sadie, Steven was just such a different person with her. He really cared for her and he looked out for her. And it's just like, people always say, would you treat your little sister like that? If this person was your sister, would you treat them like that? And it's just makes me think of Steven because he treats these other women so horribly, but then for his own sister he has a whole different standard of what's appropriate and not. So as soon as I saw Sadie on the screen, I was like, this is going to go down in some kind of crazy way, that she's going to be around all of the drama of Steven's second life in a way. It really is kind of his second life that she knows nothing about. Steven's panicking about getting his LSAT score back. We saw last episode he didn't seem like he did that well, but then he gets the notification and he did incredibly. He got a great score, which was so annoying to hear because I was like, I do not want Steven. We don't want to see him succeed. We just don't. But Diana comes in, and this is when we learn why she was so upset. She says she did not do well, like quite badly. So frustrating because, I mean, not that we're really rooting for Diana, maybe a bit more now, but we're definitely want to see her succeed more than we want to see Steven succeed. That is so upsetting to hear that Diana, who has pretty much dedicated her time to studying and learning and seems like she would have done so well, did worse than Steven? And even Steven's confused and upset about this because they were supposed to apply and go to law school together the following year. Woo, that was so unexpected. And I guess this is foreshadowing a bit of the downfall of their relationship and how Diana ends up with Pippa, because they probably just end up on different paths after this moment. We get a glimpse of Bree and Oliver at their hotel, and Bree suggests that they go to the bar downstairs. Wonder if anyone will see them. They're definitely not being very careful in public. I mean, especially around the college campus. I guess now that they're off campus grounds, it's a bit different. But back at school, they were going to this restaurant, they were at the bar together. They're not being super cautious. We finally get a look at some other Halloween costumes. Lucy and Leo are in her dorm room. Lucy is Britney Spears, and she looks incredible. I thought this was such a fun pick for her. And then I think Leo, people were saying he's K-Fed, who is Britney's ex-husband. I don't know much about that relationship, but it did not end well. So I wonder if that could be any kind of foreshadowing about their relationship, but I think it's just him, just Leo, tagging along. Let me know what you think. Pippa and Lydia are watching them on the bed, and Lydia's like, oh, are they always that gross because they're kissing? But then Lydia says, did I ever tell you, Leo, about the time that Lucy did something really embarrassing when she had an accident on Halloween? And Lucy says I was 12, but did this raise a red flag for anyone? I mean, I know hindsight's 2020 and we see what Lydia ends up being like, but to me this was so toxic friend in disguise. Clearly Lucy is very happy with this guy Leo. She's moving on from Steven. Like, why even make this comment? Was that just me? And Lydia says she approves of Leo. She's the first boyfriend of Lucy's that she's liked. And I don't know, I just didn't like these comments she was making. Also, what is her costume? Does anyone know? This is the one that I could not figure out. Ooh, and then into the dorm walks Chris, Lydia's brother. And he is dressed as Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. How fitting. The tone, this mood in the room just completely changes. Lucy says, I thought you had a pledge thing tonight. And Chris says, oh, they gave us the night off. So we weren't thinking that he was going to be here, and no one is prepared. I mean, Lucy and Pippa are not prepared to see him. Lucy asks Pippa aside if she wants to come up with a plan to ditch them so they don't have to spend the whole night around Chris. And Pippa tries to just brush it off and says, Lydia's your best friend. It's fine, it's fine. She doesn't want to cause a scene, which isn't something normal for Pippa. You know, she's fine with causing a scene. She's fine with conflict. We saw her stand up to the entire football team. So the fact that she is scared of having any kind of that conflict now shows how deeply she's internalizing this and how she's truly feeling and how it's affecting her. Diana and Steven enter the party with Sadie. That girl that Evan hooked up with, Molly, is there as well, and she kisses Evan. And we get this interesting conversation between this group about how Evan's been treating her really, really well, but also isn't ready for a relationship. He's definitely still hung up on Bree. And it's this funny paradox where, like, you have Evan who's nice and he's making breakfast for her every morning because he thinks it's the right thing to do. But in some ways, it's worse or bad because he's leading her on. He doesn't see a relationship with her versus someone like Steven who will not make that breakfast and will be awful to you and will not see the future with you. So he's not kind of putting up a front whether he knows it or not. Well, he does, but that's a different story. You see where I'm going with this. And then another Pippa Diana moment. Diana watches as Pippa crosses the room, and who is right behind her? Chris. And Diana looks sickened. Okay, we're back with the Lucy group. We're getting drinks around the table. Chris hands out the drinks. And Lucy and Pippa are exchanging these looks. When they go to all cheers and drink together, Pippa doesn't even take a sip. And Lydia's like, do you not like beer? Oh my gosh. It is so difficult because we know what's going on here. I mean, I think, assume now, and I think Lucy and Pippa are assuming as well, that she was roofied. And the fact that Chris is now handing out the drinks and they're supposed to act all natural, it's crazy. Chris says he's definitely seen Pippa crush some beers, and Lucy's like, we should not be peer pressuring anyone, and it is just the weirdest vibe. It is so weird. And it's like, how can Chris even be oh my gosh, it makes Chris really hateable, because it's like, how can he be saying these things knowing what he did? Okay, back to Oliver and Bree. They're at this hotel bar. Bree has given her fake ID, and the bartender is giving them this look like, you really expect me to believe that? But she just hands it back. You can tell she knows, though. She knows this girl is underage, and that is a fake. Bree is asking again about Marianne and his ex-wife, and he tells a little bit about Marianne, but then won't say anything about his ex-wife. Don't know what that's about. And then Bree lets it slip that Lucy knows. She says, oh, I feel so bad that she had made plans with Lucy, but that Lucy knew how excited she was for this weekend. right as she said it, I gasped because I was like, you did not just say that. And she could have backpedaled. I feel like there was a way to backpedal and to maybe say like, oh, she knew I was excited about seeing my foster sister because that's what I told her. But Bree is such a kind and honest person. I don't think she was even thinking that in herself. And so now Oliver knows that Lucy knows. Oliver is obviously upset about this, but he says, you know what, let's just go upstairs. Let's go back to our room. And he goes to pay, and the bartender says, next time you take her somewhere that doesn't card. This bartender clocked the situation and was pissed. She could tell that even if maybe this wasn't something so secret and undercover, he's clearly on a date or something with this very young girl. And then he does something very weird. He makes direct eye contact with this bartender. He doesn't break it. And then goes in to kiss Bree. And then, right as he's finishing, stares back at her again and leaves. It was a very, possessive, kind of controlling thing. It was saying, you can't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing, and she's mine. That's what it felt like to me. So that was shocking. That felt especially controlling of him. The bartender almost gives her this little look. But Bree, at this point, she is so infatuated with Oliver. I think anyone else trying to break them apart would just draw him closer to him. She is, unfortunately, in too deep. Oh my gosh, and then we're back at the party. Lydia spots Stephen from across the room, and it's like, this is her time. This is her chance. She struts up to him with Diana and Sadie right next to him. Says, are you Stephen Demarco? And she goes on, she says, you know, for someone who's such a sociopathic narcissist, I expected you to be better looking. And you can just tell Stephen's little sister's face this whole time is like, what? My brother? This was kind of satisfying. Because now his sister is going to learn a little bit about, or at least get an idea of what kind of guy he might be in reality. And she says, Stephen, what did you do? And of course, Stephen gives some BS, talking about how crazy she was. And Stephen asks Diana, what did you think? And Diana backs him up and says, yeah, he tried to break up with her nicely, but she just stalked him. Oh, just lies. But then Lydia comes back to Lucy and says, I just terrified Stephen. Or terrorized? She says she terrorized Stephen, both of them. And Lucy's upset, which, as soon as I saw her reaction, I totally understood. Lucy would not want this. She's not in a point where she wants this kind of comeuppance. She just wants him out of her life. She doesn't need this to happen anymore. And again, I'm thinking, I guess Lydia's trying to be a good friend, but she also has to think a little bit about how that action is going to potentially backfire on Lucy. Oh, and Chris comes over and just lays out on everyone on the couch. Lucy immediately stands up, and she is disgusted. And I was disgusted watching this too. He honestly is making my skin crawl this episode. Diana goes up and talks to Pippa, and she says, you know, I saw another Lady Gaga over there. Do you want me to have her killed? Which is so silly. And they have this funny moment together. She helps Pippa open her drink and is clearly starting to care for her. But then Stephen comes looking for Diana, and she is loyal to him first, unfortunately, so she leaves. Pippa, clearly distressed from being around Chris, spots Wrigley and then asks if he wants to leave together. Aww. Stephen and Evan are then talking, and Stephen opens up a little bit about his home life to Evan. I was surprised by this moment, and I'm wondering why they're building this relationship and stoking some sympathy. Maybe because then it's going to come out to Stephen about what Evan did, and then it'll hurt even more. But that was surprising to see coming from Stephen. Okay, back to Pippa and Wrigley. We get some more deep conversations happening. Wrigley explains that essentially he's depressed. He's lost a lot of joy for things that he used to do and does. He mentions wanting to reach out to Drew and says that Stephen gave him the advice to let Drew reach out. And of course Pippa's like, yeah, that's just straight up bad advice. Their dynamic is so cute, and Pippa opens up about the things that she did to be a low-maintenance girlfriend last year. which was funny. Pippa asks Wrigley to sleep over because she's been really lonely and having trouble sleeping. And I just love them so much, you know, even if they're not going to be together romantically, I feel like they are platonic soulmates. Lucy doesn't know that Pippa left, so she's asking, did you guys see Pippa leave? And she says, I should have walked back with her. I should have made sure she got home safe. And Chris responds, she's a big girl, and she can get home on her own. I despise him. Ooh, and then Sadie comes up to Lucy and Lydia and says, I'm not trying to start anything, but my brother's actually a really good guy. And Lucy doesn't want to engage. She is being mature about this, but Lydia says, oh my gosh, Stephen has a sister. Like, Lucy, tell him what kind of person he is. Lydia needs to stop. So Sadie repeats what she heard, that Lucy stalked him after he tried to be nice. And of course that draws Lucy back in because she wants to defend herself. And Sadie even says, tonight was the first night I even heard your name. And Lucy, of course, responds like, we were in a relationship the entire school year, so that's pretty messed up. So now Lucy is totally triggered and says he's a liar, he's a manipulator, and one day you're going to see how bad of a person he is. Oh my gosh, and then Diana comes up behind them, and she has heard this whole thing. And it looks really bad. If you've just entered this conversation, this looks bad on Lucy. She says, what is wrong with you? And pulls Sadie away. And Lydia's like, I think you just traumatized her. Like, okay, Lydia, you instigated this. Bree and Oliver are in bed, and Oliver is looking through Bree's camera. Interesting that we're still tying back into Bree's photography from season 1. Remember when they went on that lake house trip to Evans, and she checked out that camera from the library and took a bunch of photos? Well, I guess this photography angle is something that we might be exploring for a character. I wonder if that will come up later and maybe reveal some secrets. Also in this scene, while they're in bed, Oliver puts his ring on Bree's finger. I don't know what's going on here and in this relationship, but I know it's not going to end well. Oh my gosh, guys. Now here we get some real plot movement. Pippa and Lucy go to pick up Lydia before they all get coffee together. Lydia's on the phone and on her computer talking to someone, and she is stressed. Lydia asks them, do you guys know this girl? And it's Katie from the English class. So remember, like, she had that parakeet story where Lucy was, like, laughing and crying, and she says, oh yeah, she's kind of weird. And Lydia said, I knew it. I knew she was weird. Lydia reveals that Katie hooked up with Chris and then sent out an email to her entire sorority accusing him of assaulting her and claiming that she was drugged. This apparently happened last week, but she sent the email out that day. Whew. And immediately Lucy is not defending Chris because she knows that this very likely happened because of what happened to Pippa. Whereas Lydia, it's her brother, and she's trying to defend him and believe that he would be innocent and give him that benefit of the doubt. And I guess I can see where Lucy's defensiveness is upsetting to Lydia because she has no idea about what's true with her brother. But also we should believe Katie, but she thinks now Katie is weird and maybe crazy. It's such a mess, and my heart was just pounding throughout this whole scene. I guess it seems from Lydia's perspective that Lucy doesn't even give him the benefit of the doubt, doesn't even give a sliver of belief that he could potentially be innocent. And that's what makes Lydia upset, hence potentially why they stop being friends. Probably why. This is the theory a lot of people were discussing online. And it's also hard to understand Lydia's perspective here because we know the kind of guy that Chris is. We know he's guilty. Then Stephen and Diana are discussing how upset she is with her LSAT score and what she's going to do next. And towards the end, she slips in, it feels almost like a threat. She says, I hope my dad doesn't take it out on you. Because obviously the plan was always for him to help both of them with law school. And now if it's just Stephen and not his own daughter, Steven's probably not going to get the help of his father. So I thought that was very interesting and potentially manipulative of Diana to mention that. I wonder how long the relationship will last after this, because I think a lot of what Steven likes about Diana is this whole package. It's not just her, but it's her as his girlfriend and what she can offer him. That's how he sees people, as resources. Sadie comes in and says, last night was fun, but you're right, that girl Lucy is crazy. And Steven, his ears perk up and he's like, when did you meet Lucy? What did you say? Oh, and Sadie tells him what she said and says, oh, it's fine. It's not like I'm going to believe her. But this is a no-no for Steven. Steven is on edge. He does not appreciate Lucy saying any of this stuff, especially to his little sister. Then Lucy's in her dorm. It looks like she's been crying. And she gets an incoming call. And it's from Steven. She panics and hits decline. And then a second later, he starts calling again. And then she hits decline. And he starts calling again. So she just puts it in her desk drawer and tries to forget about it. I was nauseous during this. Like, I wanted to know what he was going to say, but understood Lucy and not even wanting to have any communication with this man again. Oh my gosh, it was stressful. This episode is stressful. And while Steven's outside trying to make these calls, Lydia passes by. He says, thanks for that speech last night. It was cute. And she goes, you're welcome. And then Steven just always knows what to do. He starts listing off these secrets, Lydia's secrets that Lucy had told him, which is awful and not great of Lucy as a friend. But I think that we don't know the full context of when she told him these things. She was not a good person when she was with him last year. So we can kind of get the idea of how Lydia turns on her, and then maybe these two get together. This is just so smart of Steven, because if I were Lydia, I would definitely not want to be friends with Lucy anymore after hearing all of this stuff. Like, that is awful. Oh, and he saves the real kicker at the end when he says, oh, and she thinks you're jealous of her. But, you know, she's probably jealous of you because she didn't mention how gorgeous you are. Shut up, Steven. Lydia walks away. She's probably upset and doesn't even know and, like, shocked to hear this. And Steven has that little grin on his face. Like, he knows that he's just done something that's going to get him what he wants. Back at Lucy's dorm, she takes her phone out and sees Steven left her a voicemail, which she starts listening to. And we don't get to hear it just yet. We don't know what she said. And the suspense, even in these last 10 minutes of this episode, was killing me. But then Lydia comes in, and Lucy immediately gets up and apologizes for everything she said and said about Chris. Lydia explains all the secrets that Steven told her, and Lucy tries to talk her way out of it, says he's manipulative and he'll twist things and make things up. But these things were very specific, and he wouldn't have been able to just make them up or guess them. Lydia's trust with Lucy is just completely broken, and you can tell she is second-guessing everything in her head right now. Lydia leaves, and then we see Lucy get on her computer and look Sadie up on Facebook. What is she doing? Then we cut to Sadie, who is alone and on Facebook scrolling, and suddenly she gets this audio message from Lucy. Here we go. The suspense has just been building. She clicks play, and it's a recording of Steven's voicemail, where he is yelling at Lucy. Oh my gosh, and there's even more suspense because she's playing this out loud, and at the same time we see Steven's gonna come up to that room any second now. Sadie's reaction, she can't believe what she's hearing, and then Steven walks in, and his face, he knows right away. This is the voicemail he just left, and his little sister, is listening to it. And he comes over and he slams the computer before she can hear any more. Her face, she is shell-shocked. Of course, he excuses himself. He says she doesn't know the full context, and he hasn't talked to her, and then he lost it. But Sadie kind of starts crying, and she won't even speak until she's able to get the words out and says, "You sound like Mom." which, as we know from season 1, they have a very toxic relationship with their mother, who is emotionally abusive. And she's right. In that voicemail, he does sound just like his mom. I felt so avenged for Lucy in this moment because it's tough because his little sister should know what kind of guy he is, but also he's the only one who's saved her from their mother. It's so ironic. Bree and Oliver get back to campus. They're saying bye. And Bree says this is the best time I've ever had. And Bree's little heart is going to break. We have a short but tender scene with Lucy and Leo in bed. And they make a joke about how Leo learned that Lucy last year sucker punched Lydia's ex-boyfriend, which was funny. And then we see Pippa, who's in her room, and she is bleaching her roots. We see her interact with Diana yet again when Diana knocks on her door. I noticed that compared to every other interaction they've had, Pippa doesn't even question why Diana showed up. She just lets her come into her room and asks her to help her while she's dyeing her roots. Diana mentions to Pippa the email that was sent out to the sorority. And Pippa says, yeah, I know. And then Diana doesn't even touch that conversation any further. And she just keeps being friendly and joking. And it's so sweet. And they're laughing. And then First Day of My Life by Bright Eyes starts playing. And oh my gosh, my heart was melting. Compared to when I watched the first episode, I was like, I don't understand this. Pippa and Diana, what the heck? Makes no sense. This was cute. This was sweet. And I understand where they're taking it now. It was funny because this was such an intense episode, but I feel like for the first time we get an ending where I was like, aw, I felt much better at the very end. I was stressed. My heart was pounding the entire time. And then we got to this last scene and I was like, wait a minute. So that was a nice change for once. Thank you to the writers. But that is all for today. We have learned so much. Oh my goodness. I thought this was a great episode. Let me know what you guys thought, if you have any more theories, anything else you want to discuss in the comments below, because we are getting closer to the end and I just want to appreciate every single moment. So thank you for listening with me and I will talk to you soon. Bye.